Hey guys, Mustached Tom here, and I'm here to review the movie Riley. Now, to be clear, this movie actually didn't come out this year, and I had no clue that this movie actually even came out. So, this movie was really poorly promoted, if anything. I didn't know this movie existed. But, here's why I'm reviewing it, though. I felt compelled due to this crazy notion that I've heard, that, woke, quote unquote, and I'm using that word very brazenly and obviously to mock it in its general use, is that it's all over the place. It's taking over our media. I've heard such wild claims, and, if I were in a call with one of these people who have made such claims, your more conservative-esque type reviewers, your critical drinker included, someone of that ilk, I would challenge them. I would say, okay, if that claim is true, if Hollywood is as woke as you claim it is, then surely it should be really easy for somebody to name 10 gay characters in a movie. Main characters in a movie. Let's make it a little bit harder, right? 10. I can probably not even name that many, to be honest, myself. So that demonstrates to me something that is woefully untrue. This whole notion that movies are, becoming this whole woke thing. But I digress. So, enter the movie Riley. It shouldn't be any surprise that the main character is gay. I'm just gonna point that out now, so it's not so much a mystery later on in the movie, though I guess there's some implications that he could even potentially be bisexual, ? I don't know, but we'll get into that a little later, I suppose. At any rate, the movie opens up with him being this major football star. He's already accomplished said goals. But his passion / sexual desires are deeply awakening. So much so that there are cuts throughout the movie where he's engaging in meeting up with some other guy, I think he's like a slightly older guy, I don't know how many years though, in this moment of sexual tension that drifts from that to something very drastically different, I suppose, is a good way of putting it and keeping it vague. But this was sprung on by his friend, who he seems to have an initial attraction to, and it seems to be quite obvious. But he is psyching himself out, and, it's very much the self-inflicted type of movie of self-doubt versus the other things that he's been prioritizing, which has been football. But these images and moments just keep layering themselves back into his life, so it seems to be this almost unavoidable thing. Because that's just how attraction works in the real world. Crazy enough, I know, but, if you will just meet somebody at a certain point in time and just something might happen. Who knows, right? That's generally the gist. But, again, he's getting in his own head that he can't be that way. It is unacceptable. He's already found this new path. And in doing so, in trying to prevent himself from being on this path, he ends up becoming boyfriend and girlfriend with one of his friends, who also seems to have a romantic feelings for him, and they do seem to have some chemistry. So that's why I talked about the whole potentially bisexual thing. Though he does seem to waver consistently throughout the entire rest of the movie. But it is only through, and there's this other gay character in the movie, in his French class. I think his name is Simon, that confronts him about it in a more casual way, is then called out. In the lunchroom, they use the F word, the FA word, just so there's no confusion about not the other one. At any rate, so it causes quite the scene between himself and this group of football players who seems to be playing it up. And it was interesting seeing this particular scene because I was watching not even too long ago this Piers Morgan section about this very word, the F word, FA. And it had Andrew Wilson and like two other people. And the claims from him were saying, oh, he loves to use it despite being a Christian, so, you can mock people being a Christian and subjugate them and demean them, because that's what religious people do. They just mock people, I guess. That seems very holy. And, there are other hypocritical things I could mention, but that's not a part of the movie. Point being, I found it so interesting that I had seen those clips and then later on I saw this movie, because it really demonstrated that, that word does have meaning. It does hold weight in the context that they were using it in. Because they were, from their perspective, they were using it casually. Just, haha, jokes on us and on each other, haha, rib, rib, rib. But there was someone else who was legitimately gay, heard that word, and was affected by it, and caused that very scene to commence. So it is very interesting to know that, especially in the past, that word has even had bigger meaning, because this movie seems to imply later on that it's very current, as in, like, this isn't like a 1990s movie where religious people would outright kill gay people and then say in the name of God. Spoiler, that's based on real stories and whatnot, or real information. So, really dark stuff. What religious people get to do and get away with is quite shocking, to say not the very least. Not at all. At any rate, so the scene causes a little bit of frustration for Riley himself, because now he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's seeing his friends, do the bit, and he himself is having these mixture of feelings. He's been seeing that guy. I will say it is a little bit unclear, like, when he sees the guy. It's presumably a little bit later in the context, but it's, like, spliced all throughout the movie. So it's kind of hard to gauge, like, when exactly this is all transactioning in terms of, like, he heads up one night, and I suppose that's that night that he ends up here in that situation, I think. At any rate, so after this whole hullabaloo, he meets with him one-on-one. It is only here where again, due to it being a more current film, the other guy, Simone, is saying, like, oh, it's no big deal anymore, being gay and all this. And I think that's an interesting claim, because I think there is a little bit of that feeling, even now in 2025. It feels like there's a slope that has happened, especially if you're somebody like me who's a 1990s kid. Back when I was growing up, gay wasn't even a thing that was ever mentioned around, my sphere of people. Though, again, I had read stories about, as I had mentioned, the story that I brought up. Those were things that were happening around that time. Religious people killing gay people in the name of God. That was a thing that was happening in the 1990s. So being gay then was definitely not great. In fact, pretty horrible. And so it seems like a movement was necessary for a certain pride parade, perhaps, that is now being re-shunned, re-evaluated even amongst gay people. All of these things are happening now. And it does seem like, again, we're sloping down because we only sloped back up during, realistically, I would probably say slightly after and during Obama, because that's when gay marriage became a thing. And that was like 2000 and... I don't remember the exact years. But yeah, it's when Obama was president, essentially. And then from that point onward, there was like an upslope of like, yay, being gay. But in media, that's where things get interesting. Because there was like the first gay animated kiss, which I believe was, on the screen at least, was, what's the show? Oh god, what was his name? Because the show's like the Gems and Steven Universe. There we go. I was like wondering like what was it called. So yeah, like that was something that was a little bit older, but it was something that had to be fought for just to be seen, because before then you had the Hays Code, which explicitly said you can't make gay characters prominent in media. That was a thing that happened and existed and seems to still exist, ? Like, it is rare to see gay characters as main characters and that being the plot. It's rare. In fact, I just mentioned at the beginning of this review, I didn't see any trailers for this movie despite all of its accolades on top you can see there. So that, to me, really explores a lot of the media landscape when it comes to LGBT plus, material, in terms of, like, it being mainstream. It's like, no, not really. Not as much as you might think when you actually explode it outward from where you're looking at it from. And, I've seen, like, one other gay movie in my two that I can think of. One was a YouTube short, so I would count that one just to, so there's three. Wow, that's such an explosion. That's overtaking Hollywood. 3 films with the main character being gay. And if you include Owl House, which had the first bi character, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that was, the show that got canceled by Disney because of, well, conservatives on, because, and then Disney got spooked because they didn't want their creatives to push the boat, as it were. They didn't want to, Disney didn't want to be, despite saying that they were going to be, right, progressive, they were like, no, we're cowards. So, the immediate call out was pretty obvious since the Owl House is that Disney was shit at this. Shocker. And this movie obviously isn't made by Disney, obviously, because it has a main gay character. Something that I've not seen Disney do in the mainstream. I've seen, like, they off-brandedly hire, something to pop up on Netflix and be produced secretly. Like, they go through all of these extra hoops to be like, no. We're still we're the friendly Disney, the approachable Disney. You see, we're right. That's their approach. Has been and still is. Right? Again, I would ask, can you name, there's that one gay character in Disney that's like a guy. And, like, how much time did that get in that movie? The Stranger Worlds one, right? Like, what, 2 minutes? Not even. That's it. And this is a tragedy, by the way. And the other movie that I'd seen, was a more of a comedy mystery type of thing. Love, Simon, right? And then the other one was In a Heartbeat, the young gay romantic animated short. Those are the three, and now we have Riley, which was a 2023 film, I think I saw when I was looking at the date. Anyway, so that is where we are, historically speaking. And, if you were to ask me to expand about, even further outside, I'd struggle. I'd be like, I don't know. Right? Anyway, back to the film. So Riley is obviously struggling himself. He kind of tries to explore with his friend at a certain point, and the friend kind of allows him to go pretty far, up until a hand job. Unironically, that's what happens in the movie. And then he finally just says, no, I'm not gay myself. And so he himself, Riley, is confused. He has the whole girlfriend situation still going off. This sort of coincides with his talks with the guy where he's like, where he's trying to get intimate and he's becoming more and more discomforted by that situation. And eventually breaks out. And then the fourth, I think it's like broken into 4 sections, and then the final one is like him getting the advice about flipping this coin and just either just going all out or, and being your true self, being openly gay, as it were, or, staying in the closet and being miserable. Those are the options that he provided on the coin, this other guy that he's seen. And so the coin is flipped, and he kind of alludes to, after flipping said coin, going to his girlfriend and sort of breaking it off with her and saying pretty bluntly that he doesn't say, I'm gay. He says, I'm not straight. That's how he puts it in the context. And I think that's very telling, that it was put that way instead of the other way, about what type of character Riley ends up being in this. So that gets broken off. He's not with his friend because his friend is straight. And he's not with the other guy because they had the breakup. And then he's not with Simone because Simone, he was still in that conflicted era of it all, of figuring out where he was during that point. So, with it being a sort of more of a tragedy rather than a comedy, he doesn't end up with anyone. And it does seem like he progresses on with football being his focus, and then uh, later on than, you know, just kind of being whatever. It's kind of left up until, like, well, love life, question mark, right? That's kind of where that leaves off. I suppose, like, the other flip of that is, and I think this happens somewhere in the middle, later portion of the movie, where he's, like, in the locker room, he's with his coach, and eventually, at some point, it's with his coach that he explicitly says he's gay, because he's, like, being, like, told, like, he's, like, being, scolded off by, like, he had this moment in the locker room with this other guy, and there was, like, a fight, and so, like, the beef caused him to be confronted by his coach, and then he eventually breaks it off and just says, "I'm gay," he yells it essentially. And here's where I take issue with the movie in terms of, like, criticizing it. We're told that, it takes place currently, so we're in the juncture of, like, oh, everyone's pretty chill with it, right? Obviously, the friends are still pretty on the hazing portion end of that wheel. But the wheel sort of seems to also consist or almost imply that Riley got this attitude because the other guy that he was sleeping with mentions this. That, your parents must have fucked you up when you were, like, getting raised. And that's the one part of the movie we never see. And I think that's my biggest criticism with the movie, is that we actually don't really know how his parents legitimately feel about this up until the coach part. I think the coach is the father. I got confused on, because I don't remember if it was the same actor or a different actor, or if the coach is a separate character from the father, or if it's the same. Anyway, point being is that, yeah, it is very unclear if the parents were comfortable with that information or not. It is very unclear, and it's like, so this is like a self-inflicted problem, at least in terms of, like, this, but that part where the other guy claims that, he got it from his parents, it does bring up the point of, like, well, we don't see that, we're just told that all of a sudden. So it's like, so what were his parents? It alludes to the question. It brings up a question that is unanswered by the movie, and it does feel a little bit empty. So yeah, not a perfect movie. It misses out on quite the blunder there, I would argue. With it being a tragedy, I can understand that it ends with him being, alone. That fits. But again, it's rough out here, because I also had my issues with Love, Simon, back when I was reviewing that movie. And it's been a while, so I don't remember a lot of the details, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't end up with a particular guy either. It's like the end of the movie, that's sort of like the point, is like he's going on a date, and that's just how the movie ends, of us not knowing the conclusion of that. So it's like this sort of unattainable, unanswerable question, and now we have two of those just floating in the air from this movie. And I would like to, have a gay movie where that's not the case, where we just explicitly get an answer. That'd be nice, if another one of these gets to even exist. Because let's be real, a movie involving a lesbian couple is upticked over gay couples. It's just the way it works, unfortunately. Even in that, again, as I already mentioned with the Owl House, with her being bisexual and then Disney canceling that, so it's like even that has its hindrances along our little journey of LGBT content. And it seems like there's always this hurdle that is just left unfiltered. It's like, why is no one in gay media ever allowed to finish and be happy? Why is that conclusion never the end? It didn't happen in Love, Simon, which is a comedy, so I'm a little bit surprised by that one. This one was a tragedy, so at least it was a little bit understandable. In a Heartbeat seems to imply that at least there's, like, romantic interest at the end of the movie, but there's no, like, moment after that. It just sort of implies. There's no happily ever after, almost, you know? And, speaking outside, and kind of alluding back to Disney, it's like, when you think of all the straight couples and all the Disney princesses and all of this stuff and all of the oversaturation and even moving outside of Disney and well, not necessarily, but like superheroes, and they get their relationships too. When they do have relationships, you do see them typically, most often than not, hook up. So it's like odd, It's just odd that even when I look at the films that have come out in this era, the two the one I'm reviewing and the one I mentioned, that there's no happy ending. There's no conclusion to any of these movies. They're just, what if? Or, they're alone. It is that. So, in terms of what is here, I do, with the unanswered questions about, like, what were his parents like in the terms of Riley, I do feel like this movie is a bit of a 6 or a 7 out of 10, unfortunately. So I don't get the little accolades at the top there, because I think this is a pretty average movie, honestly. So yeah, just wanted to review a movie that I've seen no one else review. So I'm a little bit surprised that I checked, I wrote Riley reviews, and then there were smaller or like channels I didn't even recognize reviewing the movie, I guess, but like none of the reviewers that I watch even touched this movie. Not even a single one of them. That's like, interesting. For, again, this is a thing that's apparently exploding, and yet nobody talked about it. It's like, oh, okay, so I guess that's another blow up on that whole lie that's been told. Anyway, Riley is an okay movie. There is parts that are missing that I feel like could iron out that stricter 8, 9, 10 score here and get those accolades, but as it is, I think it's just a solid movie, a 7 out of 10. And that's my review for Riley. Hopefully, sometime in the future, we can have a movie with gay characters where they get their happily ever after. Wouldn't that be nice? I would like that. Because, as I mentioned, yeah, I can think of 3 movies, one of them being an animated short, that are of explicitly gay characters. 3. That's the explosion. So I can't wait for us to explode again, somewhere in the future. Who knows where it'll come from? Husband Hotel and Hell of a Boss have gay characters and lesbian characters, so there's always rooting for that. But the happily after, obviously, those series are continuing onward, so those are wait and sees, right? So those are exciting, at least, to know what's on the horizon, despite criticisms, some of which have fallen flat themselves, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, if you ended up enjoying this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description when you're headed over my petition about small YouTubers, second to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly, and third to my Discord server. You can join, collab, shield, all that cool stuff for free. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.